You ever think about some of the things that stopped working in sales like years ago? Some of the things that are still working today, and some of the things that you don't even know can be utilized and to help you perform well. Well, today on this episode, I'm going to bring on a guest. Well, listen up. I'm going to bring someone back from the past. He was a guest on our podcast last year, and the things that he shared then are still just as relevant as they were then as they are today. And I feel that it would be great for you to listen to some of his thoughts and to make sure you make some course corrections if you're not doing them. Listen to what he has to say. This episode today is brought to you in part by TSE Certified Sales Training Program. If you are a sales rep or you have a sales team and you're trying to figure out ways that you can help your team improve their skills, check out TSE Certified Sales Training Program. The first 2 modules are absolutely free, and it would be an honor to have you join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. Take advantage of a 30-day free trial and also a free book of your choice. Simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we have Mr. Brandon Bruce, who has come from humble beginnings to now co-founding and growing Cirrus Insights with $12 million in annual revenue and is number 44 on Inc. 500 list. Now, the cool thing about these guys is that they know what they're doing in the sense that they're pioneers. Back in 2011, they were the first Gmail Salesforce connector in the market, and they saw some amazing things from that. They've learned a lot of great insights, which has helped them propel. And some of the thoughts that he's going to share with you today, I feel are just as relevant as they were last year as they are today. So listen to some of his thoughts. Take some notes, write them down, take Evernotes, whatever you want, but apply them. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey, great to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Anytime, brother. I'm excited to have you today because you know what? So often as sales professionals, we get caught in our own zone where we just focus on what we're doing, what's our company doing, and we don't get a chance to get out and to interact. And I'm grateful to have podcasts like this and also to have guests like yourself who can give us greater insights. Particularly, I want to talk about today some of the things that may be changing in the world of sales. We know that some things are not working today that has worked in the past. But before we dive into all that fun stuff, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, man?
Yeah, sure. I'm Brandon Bruce. I'm the co-founder of a software as a service company called Cirrus Insight. So Cirrus, like the high wispy cloud. We've been called at times Serious Insight, which I don't mind. It makes us sound serious about what we do, which we are. 2 years ago, we were called Citrus Insight, which may resonate for you, Donald, since you're down in Florida.
Yeah.
We made a video about how we went into the orange juice business for April Fools one year, which was kind of fun. And then last year, I was introduced as the COO of Cirrus Insight, which I actually thought sounded like a really awesome company to work for. Maybe even more fun than doing software is to get into the circus business. But nevertheless, we make software for sales professionals and entrepreneurs that, live, work, and breathe inside the inbox, as many of us do. So our tools are a Gmail plugin and an Outlook add-in that have power tools for salespeople like email tracking and attachment tracking and appointment scheduling, et cetera, and templates. And then we have a really great, really world-class integration with the Salesforce platform, which my co-founder Ryan Huff is an expert in. So that's where we came from. We were the first Gmail Salesforce connector on the market when we launched back in 2011. So now we're about 6 years in.
Well, that sounds pretty wicked, but I got to say, man, I think I have to go back to that Circus one. I think Circus is probably my favorite out of all of them.
Yeah, that was a highlight because it was also surprising. I mean, they introduced me as, hey, this is Cirrus Insight, and they didn't realize the error at the time. And so then they just kind of clapped, and I went up and started my chat. But people seemed to be kind of excited because there's not that many circuses anymore. So they were looking forward to what I had to say.
Well, let's talk about this. The world of sales is totally evolving, and it's changing, and it's constantly changing. I mean, I think selling a human behavior don't necessarily change per se, what moves an individual, but the means where we go about making sure we can build value and so forth. But what are some of the things that you would say are changing? What are some of the top things you've recognized as change in the sales landscape or that's different?
It seems to me, and this is something that I'm trying to be careful about, and our team is talking a lot about, it seems like there's a big push happening right now. And I think that's a little bit dangerous. I think anytime those of us in the sales business that have products and services we're trying to sell feel like there's a push coming on, that's probably not exactly the feeling that the buyer, that the consumer wants to have. And I'm not sure exactly if that's right or not, if there's always been a push, but we're just kind of seeing it more now. It's an N of one perspective. But I do think maybe it's symptomatic of the fact that there are a bunch of companies that are now at this point at which they're kind of growth stage. And so there's a premium on hitting numbers and consistently growing at this very fast clip. And meanwhile, there's a bunch of companies just starting out that need to get a foothold in the market. And to do that, they need to sell. So there just seems to be, on the positive side, tremendous amount of energy, enthusiasm, applications. Everybody's hustling and trying to find a way to build a better mousetrap. On the negative side, there does seem to be a big push where people are coming in and they're really focused on just getting the deal done, closing the deal, maybe a little less focused on making that personal connection because that just takes time. And all of us in sales get antsy, right? No one wants to close the deal next month. We'd all rather close it this month. And yes, I do too, right? I run a sales team and I want to close them this month too. But I think there's a happy medium. We have to be careful when we get so focused on making numbers and less focused on, are we building sustainable relationships with our customers?
Interesting point with that sustaining relationship and not necessarily just pushing. I've been a part of teams where it seems like there was just one focus, right? Was really just, it didn't care what happened as long as you just made the number. But I recognize with those teams, we always had issues with long-term customer success. Customers didn't stay with us as long because it was more of a one-time kind of thing, and that didn't build that lasting relationship. What are some of the damages you have seen when organizations have this big push mentality?
I mean, I think at the outset, like you say, you're going to see possibly churn, some retention issues because you just don't know each other well enough. It's easier to walk away when we don't know our vendor as well as we'd like, when the vendor doesn't know us as a customer as well as they'd like. I think when I was reflecting on this before the podcast, I was like, what are some great sales experiences I've had? And the one that jumped out in my mind is interesting because it was a one-time purchase. There hasn't been an ongoing long-term relationship. And that's one of the things I appreciated the most about how they did business is this company, and they sold countertops. And so when we were building a house a few years ago, I went to go look at their countertop options, and I had something specific in mind. I wanted a hammered copper countertop for a downstairs bar. And so I went in to look at what they did, and they specialized in metals. And they said, okay, how big do you need it, et cetera? I got the spec, and okay, we don't think we have one, but we can make one, and here's what it would cost, et cetera. And then as I described it more, and especially the size, it was really long. And they said, tell you what, we've got one. It's from a couple years ago, and it's up really high, up in the rafters. But if you want to grab that ladder and go up there and take a look at it, you can. And I was sure. So I climb up, like a story on this ladder and up there, and it's covered in dust. And so I wipe off the dust, beautiful hammered copper countertop. And they said, it's about 4 inches longer than you need. If you want, we'll just cut the 4 inches down. And I said, yeah, this is honestly perfect. This is just what I'm looking for. And after I told them that, they then came back and said, well, we've had it for a while. A lady wanted it and then decided to switch to stainless. And so we just kept this in inventory. But we've had it for a couple of years. We'll sell it to you for 50% off. And I said, great, sold. They said, we'll cut off the 4 inches. We'll deliver it to your house. I think it was a great selling experience because obviously they listened to exactly what I wanted in terms of a product, as well as the product specs, right? The size, et cetera. They thought about it long enough to think, hey, we have this thing from a couple of years ago, which we've otherwise long since forgotten about, and we're willing to let you look at it. And even after you told us that it was perfect, which, I basically showed my hand, right? Not necessarily the best negotiating, that they could have said, great, it's full price, right? Well, hey, we can get this guy for everything. Instead, they said, hey, we'll give it to you for 50% off, which in some ways was kind of a gift, but it was basically like, hey, we also don't want it to sit up in the rafters. It's not doing anyone any good up there. We'd love to do business with you. Here's a sale. And they met me partway, and I just had a great experience doing business with them. But it's also interesting to think about, hey, building a sustainable relationship. How often am I going to be in the market for buying a countertop, right? The house is built. I hopefully won't have to replace anything. And so I'm not going to buy a countertop anytime soon, maybe ever. And yet they did this deal, and I'm certainly an evangelist, if anyone were to ask me, where should I buy a countertop? Obviously, I'd give them a glowing recommendation. But they didn't do it just for the purpose of building a sustainable relationship. I think they did it because it was just the right thing to do. And they did close a sale, and they closed it right away. So in terms of timing, they got their deal, they moved product right away, they got Sling out of inventory, and they made for a very happy customer. But reflecting on that this morning, I thought it was great in part because obviously they listened well, but also they weren't focused on like, well, I'm going to do right by this person because I want to build a sustainable relationship, because I want a long-term customer, because I want a great review. They did it because it was the right thing to do. It was good for me as a customer, but also it was good for them, for their business. They made a sale, and they made it immediately, and they didn't have to do any additional work except for cut off 4 inches of countertop. So it's that type of sale that I think all of us have to continually remind ourselves to kind of refocus on, and just, kind of do the right thing. Do the thing that's easy, that sometimes we think, gosh, do I really want to do it that way? It's too easy. Maybe I should push a little more. Maybe I should negotiate. Maybe I should hide the ball and try to get an upsell or a cross sell or do this a little bit differently. It's like, hey, why not just do the easy deal, the deal that the customer can say yes to immediately and think, yeah, maybe I left a little bit on the table, but I got the sale, and everyone feels good about it, and go forward from there.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, Brandon is going to pick up where we left off and continue the conversation, sharing some more insights, some more tools, and some more ideas when it comes towards outreach. You're listening to the Sales Evangelist podcast, and I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. In my beginning efforts as a sales rep, man, it was tough. I was begging for money. I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a really difficult time. The company I was working with, well, they were smart enough to put me through some sales training, and then I saw a hockey stick in my performance. One of the cool things was each week we went to this group training program, and I was able to fortify my skills and improve, and next thing you know, I started to really do well. I figured whenever I have my own opportunity, I'll educate sales reps like that. So we created TSE Certified Sales Training Program. It's to help sellers of all levels. If you are trying to figure out what are the best strategies to find prospects, the first section will teach you that. If you know what to do to find the prospects, but you're having a difficult time crafting the right questions or getting them to say yes to your demonstration, well, we have a section devoted just to educate you on building value. Or even if you have an amazing way of finding the problem, but you're just not delivering it right, or perhaps you're just not getting them to say yes often enough, we have a section devoted just for closing. If you want to test it out for yourself, you can take advantage of the first 2 modules absolutely free. Go to thesalesevangelist.com/free course. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/free course. It would be an honor to have you and your team join. This episode is also brought to you in part by Audible. One of the cool things is that I dissect and devote my time to educating myself as a sales leader, as a business owner, and also as an individual. My wife and I are expecting our first little guy later this year, and one of our friends recommended Babywise. So I'm listening to that book. It's an amazing book, by the way. Besides talking about sales, I also love talking about space. So if there's anything I can learn about space, hey, I'll check that out. So there's a book I'm listening to as well called Beyond Earth. And of course, there are the sales education books. I have plenty of those in my arsenal. One of them I recommend you check out is Bob Burg's book, The Go-Giver. Now, you can take advantage of Audible. They are giving the TSE audience a free book of your choice. You can choose one of those or one of your own, absolutely free. And then they'll give you 30-day access to Audible. You can't beat that offer. I would recommend you go check it out. Go back to the show notes or simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Again, audibletrial.com/TSE. You're going to go on a whole new adventure now. Good stuff. Hey, we're back. And as we dive into the second half of this episode, I want you guys to listen for and also to implement some of the things that Brandon has shared with you and that he will continue to share. He's going to talk a little bit more about some of the emailing side and what you can do to make sure that you're being effective with your sales emails. Check out his thoughts. And the cool thing about that too, and thanks for sharing that story, is that I think it goes back to what you share, is that you become the evangelist for that organization. Though they may not have gotten, the total amount from you that they potentially could have had, I think you gave them a lot more because now you're evangelizing about them on this podcast. And I'm sure we're going to put them in our show notes. And I'm sure you're going to tell everyone else about you, and you're an influencer in your sphere. So you have an opportunity, they have an opportunity to receive even more of more of a connection than just that extra, whatever, couple hundred, a few $1,000s they're going to get on, what they could have had. So it goes back to that long run philosophy and that long run ideology that we want to build customer relationship and customer value. There's a book, Raving Fan. Are you familiar with that book?
Yeah, I am. It's a great book.
Yeah. And when one of the sales organization I work with that did it well with the onboarding, they gave us all that at the very beginning, gave us that to study and to make sure we understand so that we can know what the company philosophy was. And we saw raving fans, people who were with for a long time who bought our solution and they would upgrade or buy more later on. And that was the long-term philosophy.
And here's what I like about that concept too, about the concept of a raving fan. I think that's an important adjective because a fan may do things that are somewhat predictable. And all of us have been in some way taught around the idea of building a machine, right? So if you have a customer that likes your product, then they'll give you between this range of net promoter score, and they'll do these following things. They'll promote you on social, they'll leave you a review of this many stars, etc. And you want to think about it as a machine. I like, by contrast, the idea of this raving fan. I mean, when someone's raving, they're kind of unpredictable, but it's unpredictable in a great way. And I think that's the perfect thing to think about. You want people to be happy, and so happy that they're such a fan, they might go out and do some crazy great things for you, and you have no idea what those are. So you're not doing it with this purpose in mind of well, gosh, if I really build a relationship with this customer, I'm pretty confident that in 3 years, they'll come back with a 92 NPS score. Instead, you're thinking, I just want this person to be raving. They're so happy that who knows what could happen. They might take me to their next 3 jobs because people are pretty mobile these days. They might tell their uncle or their best friend or their wife that they're using our product, and they might pick it up and be a next customer. They might write a book and mention us in it, or have a podcast and just tell the world about our app. And they didn't have to do that, but they feel so raving, so passionate about it that who knows what might happen, right? Sort of this ripple effect where the unknown is the most exciting part about it. And I think, that's the part that I like in my mind that gets me excited, because it has a lot less to do with building the quote unquote sales machine where everything is very predictable and everything's by the number, but instead building this fan base that, who knows what could happen, right? It's now is a football playoff season. It's who knows what the people might do during tailgating, right? They might come and show up all day. They might even not make it into the stadium, but they're going to buy a lot of merchandise and they're going to have a great time with their buddies grilling hot dogs in the parking lot. And that's awesome, right? Who could have predicted that early on when they first started the first game of football? But that's what happens when you get people excited.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to kind of do a little of a twist here and jump to another concept. Something else that's evolved in the world of sales is the way that we reach out to prospects. We feel, and you guys have probably seen this, and this is why you guys have, a Cirrus Insight is, is the fact that it's becoming harder and harder to reach prospects. And, there are many different tactics out there. Let's talk about what are some of the tactics that you see that people are doing, whether they're effective or not effective, to reach out to prospects at this current stage and this current era of sales?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly know, having just crossed through the holiday season, how big e-commerce has gotten. And I think the big takeaway for me from that, as a big Amazon shopper, is that I'm going to the store and I'm going to buy the things and do my own work. And of course, we've all seen all the stats. Buyers have done X% of their research before even contacting you or before even engaging in a sales process with the sales team. But I think what's important there is, okay, there's still a lot of outreach. There's still a lot of prospecting to be done. But what can we do to bridge that gap? If we've got buyers out there doing all this work and research on their own and they're used to making an Amazon purchase, and meanwhile, we've got our team, sales team, that's trying to do, prospecting and outreach and research, et cetera, what things can bridge the middle? And I think one of those things is an example, and we use this, and I'm starting to see it proliferate all over the place, is make it really easy for the buyer, once they want to talk to you, to actually talk to you. And how are you going to have that conversation? So, we put our calendars on our website. So if you want to schedule time with us, you can. And you can choose a time that's convenient for you and schedule it without talking to us. And that will automatically go on our calendars, and we'll meet you at the set date and time and have a conversation. So it's buyer-driven demo versus us reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to do a demo? You want to do a demo? which is good. We're still going to do that. And some people say yes, but more often than not, they're coming to us and saying, I want to do a demo now. And I want to do it on my schedule. And it's going to be in 3 weeks because that's when my decision makers are ready to huddle around a table. And so we're going to meet them partway. Tools like that help to kind of bridge that middle are important. We did an acquisition just at the end of last year of a company called attach.io. So they do attachment tracking and document management. And in my view, that's also one of those tools that helps to bridge the middle because it enables you to, instead of putting a bulky slide deck as an attachment on an email, instead you put the bulky slide deck up in the web portal to manage the document, and you can grab a link to it and put the link in your email. Okay, why is that useful for us? Why is it useful for the recipient? Because they can just click on it and view it online. There's no risk of the attachment corrupting anything on their computer. There's no malware risk. There's no, the attachment is too big and it can't make it through our spam filter, etc. Instead, they get to go see it in a viewer on the web. They can easily share it with their colleagues, etc. And from our perspective, we get to know, was the slide deck useful? If it was a 15-slide slide deck, does everybody just make it to slide 6 and then leave? In which case, something's wrong with slide 6, or we need to shorten our slide deck or make a better pitch. So we start to learn in that middle. And the great thing is we can send those out as prospectors, but we can also just post those slide decks on social, in our email signature, on our website, and people can come and view them when they're ready to see them. So they can be on our website and say, I really want to see, the pitch deck for this Cirrus Insight product, and click through it. And we're getting all that real-time analytics saying, these are the slides they're most interested in. This is when they abandon. This is when they share it with their internal decision makers. And we can learn from that and then respond to them and say, hey, I saw you were on slide deck. Love to follow up with a demo. If you want one, click here and book a time with us on our online calendar. And so we're just meeting them halfway, which is how, the best sales always happen. It's a buyer saying, I'm pretty interested. I think I'm ready to buy. And a seller saying, we'd love to have you. And I'm pretty interested in selling to you. And it's the meeting halfway. And so we're very interested in the strategies, tactics, tools that we can use to bridge that middle.
I love the idea of meeting halfway. It is, again, it signifies that idea that there's a companionship or some kind of partnership. And, we're all bringing something to the table, but it's not this one-sided trick. And unfortunately, I get, we've all seen that where we got some, people in the past who tell us, this is, they have a bad distaste for sales because they see sales as where someone is trying to trick or convince someone of something that they don't need. And that's not selling. That's, trickery or a con artist. You can definitely persuade by sharing insights, but where it seems sometimes where the salesperson come off like, we won that, or the buyer feels like they got sold, then you don't have a meaningful relationship.
And that is, I think, in a nutshell, why sales is hard. It will always be hard. It will always be an art and not a science. These things are not reducible down to an AI algorithm, at least not yet, because it's hard and you have to make these very nuanced decisions as part of the relationship. So to give a good example, recently, and we're very interested in buying this product for ourselves internally. And I was asking our VP of marketing, hey, are we going to pull the trigger on this product? And she said, yeah, I think I am. I've emailed them saying that I would like to buy. She's like, but I would like to feel like they want our business more. So it was interesting, right? It's the opposite of being pushy. It was like they're taking the very opposite approach of like, they're not pushing us at all. And in fact, they're so standoffish. Our VP of marketing is getting skittish that she may not want to buy because she's like, well, do they really care about us as a customer? Because they're not coming back to us saying, we want Cirrus Insight on board. We want to work with you. We want your business. So then it's making her feel skittish, like, well, are we too small? Are we going to be too small of a customer? Are we going to get the attention that we want post-deal, et cetera? So in my view, that just goes to show how hard it is, because I was thinking, hey, this company is doing a great job of not being pushy. They're just answering our questions as we go. It's totally up to us. Let us know if we can be helpful. But meanwhile, it's like, but we also want to know that they want our business, right? So what's the appropriate amount of positive pressure in the deal to actually get this thing closed? And that's where the art is. And it's figuring out, what does your buyer need and want to hear to help move the conversation forward.
Great point. I love what you shared the last part there, what the buyer wants and needs to hear. It's interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the idea of email outreach, because that is something that you guys are kings of, because we know that there's the straight up cold outreach, and we know that there's, like you said, to pick up the phones and things like that, the power dialer and so forth. And you guys have some ways of meeting halfway. But let's talk about why should we consider using, how can we better use email to help out with our outreach efforts?
Yeah. And I think email is very hard, and it's only gotten harder since the time that we started 6 years ago. So I think, as with any trend in technology, or in this case in sales technology, as more and more people come on board with marketing automation and sales automation for email, then there's simply more volume. And all of us on the receiving end of that are like, whoa, too much, right? Hundreds of emails a day from various vendors trying to sell me something that's too much. And the spam filters try to catch on and so forth. And so it's hard to break through. I think the things that are working, and I've bought several pieces of software and other products because of cold email outreach to me over the last several months. So I know, at least personally, when I'm the buyer, it still works. Now, that's after receiving hundreds, maybe thousands of those emails. So it doesn't always work. It's hard. But the ones that have worked have been short emails. In other words, probably 2 or 3 lines long with single sentence paragraphs. It's got to be super easy for me or for anybody to read it at a glance, because no one's really reading deep content anymore. We just want to scan headlines. So the email's got to be really easy to parse. It's got to be very obvious what it is that they do. There's got to be a link, preferably 2, and they can go to the same place. But it's got to be really easy for me to just click and say, yeah, I want to learn more. I want to check this out. I want to start a free trial of this thing. So frequently it'll be call to action link in the email, as well as a PS, and then phrased slightly differently, but could link to the same place. Pretty much all of them are plain text emails, or just simple text emails with maybe a company logo at the top to identify who they are from a branding perspective. But these are not your rich, detailed, image and video laden newsletter type emails. That doesn't seem to get through. A lot of times Google and other filters will knock those out. So they're these simple, largely text-based emails with a, descriptive subject, something in there that is intriguing, that's interesting. To your point, the subjects that are tricky, right? Like regarding our meeting today, from someone that I don't have a meeting with, that's probably not, it worked. It got me to open it, right? So I've always acknowledged like, well, that worked. It got me to open it. But once I have opened it, it's pretty easy to just move on and be like, oh, I don't have a meeting with this person, right?
Yeah.
So from that sense, and we all get hooked by these at some point. Those are vanity metrics, right? We can all probably send out an email that gets 100% open rate. But then what happened after that is what we're really interested in. Did it actually drive conversations, and did those conversations drive sales? But yeah, a lot of it is the same as watching TV, which is rare for all of us now since it's a Netflix world. But if I was watching, some NFL playoffs last night, then you notice on the commercials, there's a lot of commercials for selling trucks, which are totally irrelevant unless you happen to be buying a truck, in which case it's very relevant. And there's enough people that are buying trucks that they're going to put commercials out all day. So it is important to not kind of lose faith. You got to keep sending the message out, even if it's a very, very small percentage of people where the timing will be right. So the one I'm thinking of in my mind is I got an email, it's about 3 lines long, and it was talking about helping to build referral networks, right? Hey, here's your customer, and they want to tell other people about your application. How can they do it? Here, we provide a platform that allows you to do it. Here's some more information. Check it out. And in this case, they also said, as a fellow founder of a software company, I'd love to get your feedback, whether you use it or not. If you're willing to check out the website and throw me some feedback, that'd be great. And that's exactly the type of emails that I've sent out hundreds, if not thousands of times, legitimately asking for feedback from other people in the game, right? These are other tech founders, and I like to send them things and just say, hey, am I insane? Am I totally off base? Will this work? Did it work for you? Is this something new we should try? And, it's a very giving community. People will write back and be like, that's a terrible idea. You should remove it right away. Or they'll say, yeah, that might work. Or it worked sort of for us, but it only worked for 2 weeks, and then diminishing returns. And so this person had asked, and I get that it's a tactic, right? They want to engage, but that's okay. Like, it's legitimate. So I wrote back and I said, this looks intriguing. I think it's interesting. I'll be in touch. I'm going to start a trial. And I did. And then we ended up buying it. So it's, and that was based on a cold email. So very low cost for them to do the outreach. And so I think that was hopefully a decent example of a good piece of cold outreach that led to a closed sale.
Very good point on that. I like it. And I think you gave us some great insights there. Going back to your, the definition, some of the things that you gave us in that framework of that email. 2 to 3 lines short, keep it, where it's sentences, centric, where it's not necessarily these big paragraphs, obvious, make it obvious what you're asking about, and given those call to actions, those simple call to actions. And I feel that especially me, when I read a lot of emails, more than often it's on my phone. And if I can read something really, really quickly and see what the point is, then, that helps me to make a decision. Like, okay, well, let's continue the conversation, or prompt me to do one simple action or a simple reply. It allows me to be engaged with that organization.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it reminds me, people would say, well, I'm going to send this to people so that it hits their inbox, first thing in the morning, the best engagement possible. I said, okay, what time are you going to send it out? I'll send it out at 8:00. I was like, well, but then you ask the person, well, what time do you check your email for the first time? And frequently they'll say, like 5:30.
Yep.
As soon as I wake up, as soon as the alarm on my phone goes off and I close it, then I look at the emails that have come through. So I was like, well, if you're checking it at 5:30, why do you think that everyone else is checking it at 8 when they get in the office? They're probably like you. They're probably checking it at 5:30. Why don't you send your messages early? And to your point, make sure they work on mobile. Make sure there's an easy link. Make sure that the preview that they see in their Android or their iPhone in that little message preview in their inbox is interesting enough that they open it, personalized enough that they think, oh, I wonder who this is, wonder what they're talking about. And that there's an easy link or a single button that's pretty easy to tap from a mobile device. Because anything more than that, some full screen video or something like that, probably not going to get engagement on that form factor.
Love it, man. Well, if there's one major takeaway you'd like folks listening to this episode to walk away with, what's that one major piece of advice?
Man, I think having been in it now for 6+ years, it's keeping up the excitement, right? It's sales, I think, is always going to be a hustle. I don't think it's ever going to be, made easy. I don't think there is this option where everyone can globally just create a sales machine and money just rolls in. I think it's a nice idea. I think all of us need to keep progressing in the direction that we can predict revenue. But I think in the meantime, and probably forever, it's a matter of putting your head down, hustling, and meeting customer halfway, right? Making deals that are easy to say yes to. And all of us know as a customer what that feels like when it's just easy to say yes, where we feel confident in our decision, which is rare because none of us like to take out our wallet. We always get this little ping of, oh, am I going to regret this purchase? Should I spend this much? Is this the right thing to do? And yet we also easily recognize when the decision is just a fast decision where it's like, oh, I obviously want to buy that because Amazon gave me free shipping, because the person at the counter store said, tell you what, it's perfect for you. And we've had an inventory, I'll give it to you for half off. So there's something in the sales process, something about the person selling to us, something about the product, something about the delivery or the service that made our decision easy. And it's coming up with those things that you can put out to market that just say, we're easy to do business with, and we're going to make it easy for you to say yes to the product, and you're going to be happy later that you did.
Love it, man. Well, if listeners out there want to get connected with you, want to learn a little bit more about you and what you guys are doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Easiest way is still by email, brandon@cirrusinsight.com. And certainly I'm active on LinkedIn also. So you can hit me, Brandon Bruce, on LinkedIn. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. So if any listeners are out in this neck of the woods, definitely give me a shout. We'll go grab coffee or lunch. Or if anyone ever is coming through the Knoxville area, maybe en route to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park or the University of Tennessee football game, we promise to have a better team this coming year. And come on out and say hello.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on a show, man. I wish I'd known. My wife and I were out there earlier last year, 2017. We spent some time in the Smokies for the summer.
Oh, nice. There's a little piece of trivia for your listeners. It's the most visited national park in the United States, which most people don't realize. They figure it's probably Yosemite or Yellowstone, but it's actually the Great Smokies. So put it on your travel plans for 2018.
Beautiful place, man. Beautiful stuff, man. Well, Sir Brandon, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. And I sure appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Blast from the past, and it's still as good. Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming on the show, and I'm grateful that we're able to share your content again. If you want to connect with him, go back into the show notes, find all the details there, thesalesevangelist.com/the-word episode number 1126. Again, thesalesevangelist.com/the-word episode number 1126. Get connected with Brandon. Tell him that you heard about him on the Sales Evangelist podcast, that DK went ahead and rerun it because it was that good. I'm sure he'll be happy and pleased to hear that. Also, while you're there, make sure to check out their content. They have some great information, as well as check out our course, TSE Certified Sales Training Program. Would love to have you and your team join. You can take advantage of the first 2 modules absolutely free to test out the content. Thesalesevangelist.com/the-word free course. You can also find the details again back in the show notes. If you're on Apple Podcasts, just swipe up on the cover art. You can find all the details at the very bottom of the screen. While you're also there, if you're not doing this, check out Audible. Audible will give you one free book and they'll give you a 30-day free trial. If you want to get a selection on a book, one of the books I recommend you check out is Donald Miller's book, The Story Brand. It's just absolutely fantastic. I love it. And this is not for people who are in marketing alone. This is for everybody. I mean, I love it. I utilize it all the time. I recommend it to everybody because it works. Find all the details again. Check out that book free of charge and a 30-day trial of Audible. All the details in the show notes or audibletrial.com/TSE. I share this stuff with you because I want to help you. I was in your same exact situation. I know how tough it is and I know how difficult it can be. I want to help you to find more ideal customers. I want you to be able to have better conversations and build stronger value. I want you to be able to have the ability to close more deals. But most importantly, I want you to challenge your mindset, challenge your way of thinking every single day, and go out and do big things. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our episode today. I know you could be doing so many other things, but you took time to come here, and I appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, I ask that you go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. That way you can get notified whenever we have a new episode. You can also share it with your friends and family and anyone you know that could benefit from listening to an awesome sales show. And review on Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to find shows like this. It goes a long way when someone is searching for a podcast and they see that other people are loving it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. This episode today was produced by myself and the Sales Podcast Network. It was edited and mixed together by the one and only Jershan O'Bale, our content writer and show note creator Shannon Rasmussen. You can find audio credits to this and all of our episodes in the show notes. And as always, I am your host, your coach, your mentor, your guide down the sales journey, Mr. Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. Sales Podcast Network.